The prison bus rolled through the gates of Ridgemont State Correctional Facility just after 7 in the morning. It was one of those cold October days where the sky looks like dirty concrete and you can see your breath in the air. The man they called Ghost sat near the back of the bus, his wrists in cuffs, staring out the window at the razor wire fencing that surrounded the place. He was 32 years old, built solid but not bulky, with the kind of calm face that gave nothing away. 3 tours in Afghanistan. 8 years serving his country. Medals he never talked about. Friends he'd buried in the desert sand. And now here he was, heading into a medium-security prison for 18 months. Because of one stupid night at a bar when some drunk fool pulled a knife and Ghost did what his training taught him to do. The judge called it aggravated assault. Ghost called it survival instinct. Either way, the result was the same. The bus stopped and the guards started yelling for everyone to get up and move. Ghost rose slowly, no rush in his movements. He'd learned a long time ago that panicking never helped anything. In combat zones, the soldiers who stayed calm were the ones who made it home. He figured prison wouldn't be much different. They processed him like cattle. Strip search. Medical check. Paperwork that seemed endless. A guard with a thick neck and bored eyes handed him an orange jumpsuit and pointed him toward the showers. Ghost moved through it all without complaint, answering every question with a simple yes sir or no sir. He kept his eyes open though, always watching, always taking mental notes. The processing officer was an older black woman with gray streaks in her hair and reading, glasses perched on her nose. She looked up from her computer screen and studied him for a moment. Military? She asked. Yes, ma'am, Marines. She nodded slowly, like she'd seen this story before. Good men who served their country ending up in places like this. It happened more than people realized. Keep your head down in there, she said quietly, stamping his paperwork. Cell block D, medium security. It's not the worst, but it's not summer camp either. Ghost appreciated the warning. He collected his bedroll and toiletries and followed a guard down. A long hallway that smelled like industrial cleaner and something else underneath it. Something stale and human that no amount of mopping could ever fully remove. Cell. Block D was a 3-tier structure with cells stacked on top of each other like shoeboxes. The noise hit him first. Men yelling to each other across the block. A television blaring somewhere. Dominoes slapping against metal tables. Laughter that didn't sound happy. Ghost had been in louder places, but there was a different kind of tension here. In a combat zone, you knew who the enemy was. In here, threats could come from anywhere. His cell was on the 2nd tier. 8 feet by 10 feet. 2 bunks bolted to the wall. A metal toilet with no privacy. A small desk and a window so narrow you could barely see the sky through it. His cellmate was already there, a skinny white kid who couldn't have been older than 25. He had nervous eyes and the kind of pale skin that suggested he hadn't been outside much even before coming to prison. Hey man, I'm your cellie, the kid said, sitting up on the top bunk. Name's Danny. I'm in for wire fraud. Computer stuff, you know? Stupid mistake. What about you? Ghost set his bedroll on the bottom bunk and started making his bed with precise movements. Hospital corners, just like they taught in basic training. Assault, he said simply. Danny nodded quickly, filling the silence because he seemed uncomfortable with quiet. Yeah, okay, cool. So look, I've been here 8 months already. I can show you how things work if you want. Where to sit in the cafeteria, who to avoid, all that stuff. This place has rules, you know? Not the official ones. The real ones. Ghost finished making his bed and sat down on it, finally looking directly at his cellmate. Danny seemed harmless enough. Scared, mostly. The kind of guy who probably never threw a punch in his life and ended up in here because he thought he was smarter than the system. Tell me about the real rules. Ghost said. Danny glanced toward the cell door like he was checking for eavesdroppers. Then he lowered his voice. Okay, so basically there's this guy named Big Ray. He runs things in this block. Has for years. You don't cross him. You don't look at him wrong. You definitely don't touch his stuff or his people. He's got guards on his payroll, so complaining to them won't do anything. If he wants something from you, you give it to him. Money, commissary, whatever. That's just how it works. Ghost listened without expression. He'd known men like Big Ray before. Every unit had someone who thought they were in charge. Every village in Afghanistan had some local warlord trying to throw his weight around. What happens if you don't give him what he wants? Ghost asked. Danny's face went pale. Bad things, man. Really bad things. I saw him put a guy in the infirmary for 3 weeks once. The guards wrote it up as a fall in the shower. Nobody said different because nobody's stupid enough to snitch on Big Ray. Ghost nodded slowly, filing the information away. He didn't plan on causing trouble. He just wanted to do his 18 months and get out. Go back to Cleveland where his daughter was living with his sister. Try to rebuild some kind of normal life. But he also wasn't the type of man to let himself be pushed around. His whole career had been built on standing firm when others wanted him to bend. That first night, Ghost lay on his bunk listening to the sounds of the prison settling into darkness. Somewhere down the tier, someone was crying quietly. Somewhere else, 2 men were arguing in harsh whispers. The guards did their rounds every hour, flashlights sweeping through the cells like searchlights. Ghost didn't sleep much. He rarely did anymore. His mind kept running through the layout of the block, the faces he'd seen, the exits and choke points. Old habits from his military days. You always needed to know your environment. You always needed to have a plan. In the morning, he followed Danny to the cafeteria for breakfast. The food was worse than anything he'd eaten in the Marines, and that was saying something. Gray scrambled eggs. Toast that had gone cold. Coffee that tasted like it was made from dirty water. Ghost ate it all without complaint. He'd survived on worse during field operations. The cafeteria was divided up by invisible lines that everyone seemed to understand. Different races sat in different sections, mostly. There were some mixed tables here and there, but the divisions were clear. Ghost found a spot at the end of a table with some other black inmates who nodded at him but didn't say much. New fish always got sized up before anyone decided to be friendly. That's when he saw Big Ray for the first time. The man was huge. Had to be 6'4" at least, close to 300 pounds, with arms like tree trunks and a shaved head that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. He walked through the cafeteria like he owned it, and in a way he did. Other inmates moved out of his path without being asked. Even some of the guards seemed to avoid eye contact. Big Ray noticed Ghost immediately. The new guy sitting alone at the end of the table, eating his terrible breakfast like he didn't have a care in the world. Their eyes met for just a second. Ghost didn't look away, but he didn't stare either. Just a neutral acknowledgement, one man to another. Something flickered across Big Ray's face. Interest, maybe? Or irritation? Hard to tell. Then he moved on. Settling at his usual table where his crew was waiting for him, Danny appeared at Ghost's elbow, tray shaking slightly in his hands. "Dude," he whispered. "Big Ray was looking at you. That's not good. That's really not good." Ghost took a sip of his terrible coffee and said nothing. He'd been looked at by men far more dangerous than some prison bully. He'd been shot at by Taliban fighters in mountain passes. He'd cleared buildings in Fallujah not knowing what was waiting behind each door. Big Ray didn't scare him. Nothing much did anymore, but Ghost also knew better than to underestimate any threat, no matter how small it seemed. Overconfidence got people killed. So he would watch. He would wait. He would learn the rhythms of this place and the people in it, and if trouble came looking for him, well, he'd deal with that when it happened. Just like he always had, for now. He finished his breakfast and prepared for his first full day in Ridgemont State Correctional Facility. 18 months. 547 days, give or take. He'd survived longer deployments in worse conditions. He could survive this too. Big Ray had been running Cell Block D for 6 years. 6 long years of making sure everyone knew exactly who was in charge. He wasn't the warden, he wasn't even a guard, but in the world behind those concrete walls, he might as well have been king. He built his reputation the old-fashioned way, through fear, through violence, through making examples out of anyone stupid enough to challenge him. The first year he arrived at Ridgemont, he'd put 4 men in the infirmary. After that, people learned. They paid what he asked, they moved when he told them to move. They kept their mouths shut and their eyes down. Big Ray had guards on his payroll too. Not all of them, but enough. A few $100s here and there bought him protection, information, and most importantly, blind eyes when he needed to handle business. The system was corrupt from top to bottom, and Ray had figured out how to work it better than anyone. His crew consisted of 5 loyal men who'd proven themselves over the years. They collected payments, delivered messages, and handled the rough stuff when Ray didn't feel like getting his hands dirty. In exchange, they got protection and a cut of whatever came through. Drugs, phones, money, favors. Everything had a price in Ridgemont, and Big Ray set those prices. So when the new fish arrived that October morning, Ray noticed him right away. Not because he was special looking. There were plenty of black inmates in Cell Block D, but something about this one was different. It was the way he walked. The way he sat alone at breakfast, eating the garbage food like he was at some restaurant. The way he didn't flinch when their eyes met. Most new arrivals spent their first few days looking terrified. They hugged the walls, avoided eye contact, tried to figure out who to align with for protection. This guy did none of that. He moved through the block like he was taking a tour, observing everything with calm, steady eyes. It irritated Ray more than he wanted to admit. "Who's the new fish?" he asked one of his boys during yard time that first afternoon. "Name's Ghost, apparently. Military guy. Marines or something, in for assault." Ray watched from across the yard as Ghost did pull-ups on the rusty bar near the fence. Perfect form, controlled breathing, the kind of workout routine that spoke of serious discipline. When he finished, he dropped down and started doing push-ups without even taking a break. "Marines," Ray repeated, chewing on the word. "Thinks he's tough." His boy shrugged. "Want me to test him? See what he's made of?" Ray shook his head slowly. "Not yet. Let him settle in first. Get comfortable, then we'll see." The first test came 3 days later in the cafeteria. Ghost was in line waiting for his tray when one of Ray's boys cut right in front of him. Just walked up and stepped into the line like Ghost wasn't even there, a clear sign of disrespect. A challenge to see how the new fish would react. Ghost did nothing. He simply waited, got his food, and found his usual spot at the end of the table. No confrontation. No angry words, nothing. Ray watched from across the room and smiled. The new fish was soft after all. All that military training, and he wouldn't even stand up for himself in a lunch line. This was going to be easy, but something nagged at Ray over the following days. He kept watching Ghost, kept waiting for signs of fear or submission. They never came. The man just went about his business with that same quiet calm. He worked out alone in the yard. He read books in his cell. He talked to his skinny little cellmate sometimes, but mostly kept to himself. When Ray's boys bumped into him in the hallways, Ghost would step aside without a word. When they took the weights he was using in the exercise area, he'd simply move to something else. When they made comments as he walked past, he acted like he didn't hear them at all. To everyone else it looked like cowardice. The new fish was scared, the new fish was weak. Easy pickings for Big Ray whenever he decided to collect, but there was one old-timer in Cell Block D who saw things differently. His name was Walter, and he'd been locked up for 23 years. He'd seen everything in his time. Every type of man that came through those gates. And something about the way Ghost carried himself reminded Walter of soldiers he'd known back in Vietnam. "You're making a mistake with that one," Walter told Ray one evening in the yard. Ray laughed. "What are you talking about, old man?" "That Marine, Ghost, I've been watching him same as you. That ain't fear he's showing, that's discipline. There's a difference." Ray's smile faded a little. "Discipline?" Walter nodded slowly, his weathered face serious. "I've seen men like him before, the quiet ones. The ones who don't react to every little thing. They're not scared. They're waiting, calculating, and when they finally move, it happens so fast you don't even see it coming." Ray stared at the old man for a long moment, then burst out laughing. "You've been in here too long, Walter. You're seeing ghosts." He laughed again at his own joke. "Get it? Ghosts?" Walter didn't laugh. He just shook his head and walked away. Ray dismissed the warning, but it planted a seed of doubt in his mind. Over the next week, he watched Ghost more closely. And the more he watched, the more he noticed small things he'd missed before. The way Ghost's eyes were always moving, tracking people and exits like he was mapping the room. The way he positioned himself with his back to walls whenever possible. The way his body stayed loose but ready, like a coiled spring that could release at any moment. These weren't the habits of a scared man. These were the habits of someone who'd been trained for combat. Still, Ray had a reputation to maintain. If word got around that some new fish was disrespecting him without consequences, others might get ideas. That's how empires crumbled. One small crack in the foundation, and the whole thing came down. 2 weeks after Ghost arrived, Ray decided it was time to send a clearer message. He caught Ghost alone in the corridor near the showers one evening, just Ray and 2 of his biggest boys blocking the path. Ghost stopped walking and stood there, calm as always, waiting to see what would happen. "You know who I am?" Ray asked, stepping closer. "I know," Ghost replied. His voice was even. Not challenging, but not submissive either. "Good, then you know how things work around here. Everybody pays, new fish especially. Consider it an insurance policy. You pay me, and nothing bad happens to you. Simple as that?" Ghost was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, and his words were measured and careful. "I'm not looking for trouble. I just want to do my time and go home. I've got a daughter waiting for me. That's all I care about." Ray smiled, showing teeth. "That's sweet, real sweet. But I don't care about your daughter. I care about getting paid. So here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna give me half your commissary every week. And you're gonna do whatever else I tell you to do. And if you don't..." He let the threat hang in the air. Ghost looked at Ray for a long moment. Then he looked at the 2 men flanking him. His expression never changed. When he spoke again, his voice was still calm, but there was something underneath it now. Something cold. "I told you, I'm not looking for trouble. But I'm not going to pay you either. I'm not going to do what you tell me. And if you're smart, you'll leave me alone." The corridor went dead silent. Ray couldn't believe what he was hearing. Nobody talked to him like that. Nobody, his hands clenched into fists and his face twisted with anger. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life," Ray growled. Ghost didn't blink. "I don't think I did." For a tense moment, it seemed like things were about to explode right there. Ray's boys were ready to move. The violence hung in the air like electricity before a storm, but something made Ray hesitate. Maybe it was Walter's warning echoing in his head. Maybe it was the look in Ghost's eyes, that absolute stillness that seemed wrong somehow. Whatever it was, Ray decided this wasn't the right time or place. "This isn't over," he said, stepping back. "Not even close." Ghost nodded slightly. "I figured." Then he walked past them, continuing toward his cell like nothing had happened. Ray watched him go, his blood boiling. Nobody embarrassed him like that. Nobody thought he would make Ghost pay. And when he did, everyone in Cell Block D would remember why you don't cross Big Ray. The only question was when. The days after that corridor confrontation were tense. Everyone in Cell Block D could feel it. Word had spread fast about what happened. The new fish had stood up to Big Ray. He'd looked him in the eye and said no. Some inmates thought Ghost was brave. Most thought he was dead man walking. Ray played it cool on the surface, but inside he was burning. Every time he saw Ghost in the yard or the cafeteria, that anger flared up fresh. The man walked around like nothing was wrong. Like he hadn't just challenged the most dangerous person in the entire facility. It drove Ray crazy. His boys kept asking when they were going to handle it. Ray told them to be patient. He wanted to do this right. He wanted to catch Ghost somewhere private, somewhere the cameras couldn't see. And he wanted to make it hurt. Not just physically, but in a way that would break the man's spirit completely. Ghost knew it was coming. He could read the signs as clearly as he'd once read enemy movements in Afghanistan. The way Ray's crew watched him constantly. The way conversations stopped when he walked into a room. The tension building like pressure before an explosion. It was just a matter of time. He thought about his daughter often during those days. She was 11 years old now, living with his sister back in Cleveland. He'd missed so much of her life already. The deployments, the training exercises, and now this 18 months behind bars because he'd defended himself against some drunk with a knife. His daughter sent him letters sometimes, written in careful handwriting on lined paper. She told him about school, about her friends, about the cat they'd adopted. She always ended the same way. I love you, Daddy. Come home soon. He kept those letters under his mattress. Read them when the nights got long and the walls felt too close. They reminded him what he was fighting for. Not his pride. Not his reputation. Just the chance to get out of here and be a father again, but Ghost also knew he couldn't let Ray destroy him. If he showed weakness now, if he let himself become a victim, he might not survive the next 16 months. Prison had a way of eating people alive. The ones who got preyed upon often didn't make it out the same. Some didn't make it out at all, so he stayed ready. He kept his routine, never letting his guard down. He slept light and woke at every sound. And he waited for Ray to make his move. It happened on a Tuesday evening. 3 weeks after Ghost first arrived at Ridgemont, the showers were always a dangerous place. Steam blocked your vision. The wet floors made it hard to move quickly. There were no cameras inside, just a guard who was supposed to check every 15 minutes but rarely did. It was where Ray had handled problems before. It was where he planned to handle Ghost. Ghost had just finished his workout in the yard. His muscles were warm and loose, which was good. He'd learned a long time ago that relaxed muscles reacted faster than tense ones. When he walked into the shower area and saw it was empty, his instincts immediately went on alert. Too empty. Too quiet. He considered turning around and coming back later. But that would just delay the inevitable. Ray wasn't going to stop. This confrontation had been building since day one, and the only way past it was through it. Ghost stepped under one of the shower heads and turned on the water. He kept his back angled toward the entrance, using his peripheral vision to watch the doorway. The hot water ran down his shoulders as he waited. He didn't have to wait long. Big Ray came in first, followed by 3 of his boys. They spread out, blocking any path to the exit. Ray had a look on his face that Ghost had seen before. On the faces of men who thought they'd already won, overconfident, eager for violence, underestimating their opponent. "End of the line, Marine," Ray said, his deep voice echoing off the tile walls. Steam swirled around him like smoke. "I gave you a chance to do this easy. You chose hard." Ghost turned off the water slowly. He stood there facing them, completely calm. Water dripped from his body onto the wet floor. His eyes moved from Ray to each of his boys, measuring distances, calculating angles. Old training kicking in automatically? 4 against 1 in a shower, Ghost said quietly. "That's how you want to do this." Ray laughed. "I want to do this however gets the job done. By the time we're finished with you. Nobody in this block will ever think about disrespecting me again." One of Ray's boys had something in his hand, metal, sharpened, a makeshift weapon that could do serious damage. Ghost noted its position, the way the man held it. Amateur grip. He'd probably never actually used it on someone who knew how to fight back. "Last chance," Ghost said. His voice was different now, harder, colder. "Walk away. All of you. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I will if you make me." Ray's smile faltered just slightly. There was something in the Marine's eyes that made his stomach tighten. That same stillness Walter had warned him about. But he'd come too far to back down now. His reputation was on the line. His whole kingdom depended on what happened in the next few minutes. "Get him," Ray ordered. The man with the weapon moved first. He lunged at Ghost with the sharpened metal extended, aiming for his midsection. It was a clumsy attack, telegraphed from a mile away. Ghost shifted his weight and pivoted. His hand shot out, grabbing the attacker's wrist and redirecting the momentum. The man's own force carried him forward and off balance. Ghost twisted the wrist sharply, and the weapon clattered to the wet tile floor. A quick strike to a pressure point, and the first attacker crumpled. Gasping in pain, the whole thing took maybe 2 seconds. The second man came from the right. Ghost was already moving, using footwork drilled into him through years of Marine Corps martial arts training. He deflected a punch, delivered 2 rapid strikes to the body, then swept the man's legs out from under him. The attacker hit the floor hard. The wind knocked out of him. 4 seconds total now. The third man hesitated, seeing his friends go down so fast. That hesitation cost him. Ghost closed the distance before the man could react, neutralizing him with a precise combination that left him on his knees, unable to continue. 6 seconds. 3 men down, and then there was just Big Ray. The king of Cell Block D stood frozen, his eyes wide. He'd never seen anything like this. He'd been in plenty of fights over the years. He'd always won through size and brutality. But this was different. This was something else entirely. Ghost stood in the center of the shower room, barely breathing hard. Water and steam swirled around him. His body was relaxed but ready, waiting. "Your turn," Ghost said quietly. Ray's mind raced. He could charge in and try to overwhelm the Marine with his size advantage. He was bigger, heavier, stronger in the traditional sense. But he'd just watched 3 of his best men get dismantled in 6 seconds flat. And there was something in Ghost's eyes now. Something Ray had never encountered before. This man had hurt people. This man had taken lives. Not in bar fights or prison yard scuffles. In actual combat. Against enemies who were trying to kill him. And he was still standing. Still calm. Still ready for more. For the first time in 6 years, Big Ray felt fear. He charged anyway. Pride and rage and desperation pushing him forward. He swung a massive fist at Ghost's head, putting all his weight behind it. Ghost slipped the punch easily, stepping inside Ray's reach. What happened next was fast and brutal and precise. A knee to the midsection that folded the big man in half. An elbow strike that sent him staggering. And then a final controlled takedown that put Ray face first on the wet tile floor. His arm locked in a position that made movement impossible without serious injury. "Stay down," Ghost said, applying just enough pressure to make his point. "It's over." Ray struggled for a moment, then felt his shoulder joint screaming in protest. One more inch of pressure and something would break. He went still, breathing hard, his cheek pressed against the cold, wet floor around him. His boys were groaning, trying to recover. None of them were getting up anytime soon. Ghost held the position for a few more seconds, making sure Ray understood. Then he released the arm and stepped back just as the sound of guards rushing toward the shower room filled the air. Someone had finally noticed something was wrong. Ghost raised his hand slowly, showing he wasn't a threat. The fight was over. He'd done what he needed to do, nothing more. Now it was time to face the consequences, but as the guards swarmed in and started yelling orders, Ghost caught Big Ray's eye one last time. The big man was still on the floor, humiliated and beaten. And in his eyes, Ghost saw something he recognized from the battlefield. The look of a man whose world had just been shattered. Nothing in Cell Block D would ever be the same again. The guards threw Ghost into solitary confinement that same night. They called it administrative segregation, but everyone knew what it really was. A concrete box barely big enough to stretch your arms. A metal bed bolted to the wall. A toilet in the corner. One small slot in the door for food trays. No windows. No human contact. Just silence and your own thoughts for company. Ghost didn't mind. He'd spent time in worse places. Observation posts in the mountains of Afghanistan where you couldn't move for days because the enemy was watching. Interrogation resistance training where they simulated captivity conditions to prepare Marines for the worst. Compared to all that, solitary was almost peaceful. He did push-ups and sit-ups to keep his body active. He meditated to keep his mind clear. He thought about his daughter, imagined the conversations they'd have when he finally got out. He replayed the fight in the shower, analyzing what he'd done right, what he could have done better. Professional habit. Always learning. Always improving. A food came 3 times a day through the slot. Worse than regular prison food, which was saying something. Ghost ate it all anyway. You never knew when your next meal might come, or if it would come at all. Another lesson from his military days. Days blended together in solitary. No way to track time except by meal deliveries. Ghost guessed he'd been in there about 2 weeks when the door finally opened and a guard told him to step out, they took him to an interview room where a man in a suit was waiting. Internal Affairs investigator, Ghost figured. The man had a folder on the table and a recorder set up to capture everything. Sit down, the investigator said. His voice was neutral, professional. We need to discuss the incident in the shower room. Ghost sat and waited. He'd been through debriefings before. The key was to stay calm, stick to the facts, and not volunteer information that wasn't asked for. The investigator opened his folder and studied some papers. 4 men were injured that night. One has a dislocated shoulder. Another has cracked ribs. The other 2 have various contusions and 1 possible concussion. You, on the other hand, don't have a scratch on you. Ghost said nothing. The official report from the guard says they found you standing over the victims with your hands raised. The other inmates claim you attacked them without provocation. That's their story. Still, Ghost remained silent. He knew there was more coming. The investigator leaned back in his chair and studied Ghost for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled slightly. Fortunately for you, there's a security camera in the hallway just outside the shower room. It's supposed to be broken. Has been for months, according to the maintenance logs. The funny thing, it actually works just fine. Someone just disabled the recording function. He pulled out a tablet and turned it toward Ghost. The screen showed grainy footage of Big Ray and his 3 boys entering the shower room. One of them clearly had something metallic in his hand. We recovered the weapon from the scene, the investigator continued. Sharpened piece of metal from the machine shop. Could have done serious damage. Maybe killed someone. Ghost watched the footage without expression. He saw himself enter the shower room a few minutes before Ray's crew. Saw them block the exit. Saw the beginning of the confrontation before the camera angle cut off the rest. The way I see it, the investigator said, shutting off the tablet, you were attacked by 4 men, one of them armed. You defended yourself. The fact that you're significantly better at fighting than they are doesn't change the nature of the situation. Ghost finally spoke. So what happens now? Now, nothing happens. To you, anyway. We're classifying this as self-defense. No additional charges. You'll be returned to general population after we finish processing the paperwork. Relief washed through Ghost, though he didn't let it show on his face. No additional charges meant his release date stayed the same. He could still get out in 16 months. He could still get back to his daughter. What about the others? Ghost asked. The investigator's expression hardened. Big Ray is facing new charges. Assault with a deadly weapon, conspiracy, probably a few other things once we finish investigating his operation. He's looking at additional years on his sentence. His boys are in similar situations. And we're taking a hard look at some of the guards who've been looking the other way while Ray ran his little empire. Ghost nodded slowly. He didn't feel satisfied exactly. Just tired. He hadn't wanted any of this. He just wanted to serve his time in peace. 3 days later, they released him from solitary and escorted him back to Cell Block D. Word had already spread about what happened and about the investigation. When Ghost walked onto the tier, every eye turned toward him. He felt the weight of those stares as he made his way to his cell. Some looked at him with fear. Some with respect. A few with something like hope. Big Ray had terrorized this block for 6 years. Now he was gone, transferred to maximum security pending his new charges. His crew had been scattered to different facilities. The power structure that had defined life in Cell Block D had collapsed overnight. Danny was waiting in their cell, practically bouncing with nervous energy. Dude, he whispered as Ghost sat down on his bunk. Everyone's talking about you. They're saying you took out 4 guys in like 10 seconds. They're saying you're some kind of Special Forces assassin. Is that true? Were you Special Forces? Ghost almost smiled. No, just a regular Marine, infantry. Regular Marines can do that. Some of them. The ones who pay attention during training. Word continued to spread over the following weeks. Other inmates approached Ghost with offers. Run Ray's old operation. Take over the protection racket. Control the contraband flow. There was a power vacuum now, and everyone expected Ghost to fill it. He turned them all down. "I'm not interested," he told each one. "I'm not looking to run anything. I just wanted to do my time and go home." Some people didn't believe him at first. They thought it was some kind of strategy, a way to seem humble while consolidating power. But as weeks turned into months and Ghost never made a move, they slowly realized he meant what he said. The man who destroyed Big Ray's empire had no interest in building one of his own. It confused people at first. In prison, power was everything. The chance to be on top, to have others fear and respect you, that was the ultimate prize. Why would anyone walk away from that? But Ghost had seen what power did to people. He'd seen warlords in Afghanistan who ruled through fear and violence. He'd seen what happened when men let that hunger consume them. They always fell eventually. And they usually took a lot of innocent people down with them. He didn't want to become that. He didn't want his daughter to visit him in prison and see a man who'd let this place change him into something ugly. He wanted to walk out of Ridgemont the same person who walked in. Damaged maybe, tired definitely, but still himself. Old Walter found him in the yard one afternoon. The weathered old man sat down on the bench next to Ghost and stared out at the fence for a while before speaking. "I told Ray he was making a mistake with you." "He didn't listen." Ghost shrugged. "Most people don't. You could be running this place right now. You know that, right? After what you did, everyone would follow you." "I know." Walter turned to look at him with curious eyes. "But you don't want it." "No, I don't. Why not?" Ghost was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Then he spoke, his voice low and honest. "I spent years learning how to be dangerous. The Marines taught me how to fight, how to survive, how to take down enemies in seconds. But you know what took me longer to learn? When not to use any of that. When to walk away. When to let things go." He paused, watching a bird land on the razor wire fence. "Being able to destroy someone doesn't make you powerful. Choosing not to when you easily could. That's real strength. That's the only kind of power worth having." Walter nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Your daughter is lucky to have you for a father," he said quietly. Ghost felt something tighten in his chest. "I hope so. I guess I'll find out when I get home." 16 more months. He could do this. He could survive this place without letting it turn him into a monster. And then he could finally start being the father his little girl deserved. That was the only victory that mattered. The months that followed were quieter than anyone expected. With Big Ray gone and his crew scattered, Cell Block D transformed into something almost peaceful. There were still tensions, still conflicts, still the daily grind of prison life. But the atmosphere of constant fear had lifted. Men could walk to the cafeteria without worrying about being shaken down. They could use the showers without looking over their shoulders. Small freedoms that meant everything to people who had so little. Ghost settled into a routine. Morning workouts in the yard. Afternoons reading in his cell or writing letters to his daughter. Evenings playing chess with whoever wanted to learn. He'd picked up the game during his deployments, killing time between missions, and discovered he had a talent for it. Something about the strategy appealed to the same. Part of his brain that had made him good at combat. Word spread that the Marine was willing to teach. Young inmates started approaching him, asking for lessons. At first it was just chess, but soon it became something more. They wanted to know how he stayed so calm, how he handled stress, how he beaten 4 men without breaking a sweat. Ghost didn't talk about the fight directly, but he taught them what the Marines had taught him: discipline, focus, controlled breathing. The importance of staying calm when everything around you was chaos. He ran informal workout sessions in the yard, showing proper form for exercises that would build real functional strength. "Not for fighting," he told them. "For life, your body is a tool," he explained to a group of younger inmates one morning. "You keep it sharp, you maintain it, you respect it, not so you can hurt people, so you can protect yourself and the people you love, so you can work hard and provide for your family when you get out of here. That's what strength is for." Some of the older guards noticed what was happening. A few tried to shut it down, suspicious of any inmate gathering. But the warden heard about it and made a different call. Violence in Cell Block D had dropped dramatically since Big Ray's removal. If this Marine wanted to run fitness classes and teach chess, let him. It was better than the alternative. Danny, his cellmate, finally passed his GED exam in the spring. Ghost had spent countless evenings helping him study, quizzing him on math problems and reading comprehension. When Danny got the news, he broke down crying right there in their cell. "I never finished anything in my life," Danny said, wiping his eyes. "Dropped out of high school. Failed at every job I ever had. Even my crimes were failures, that's how I got caught. But I finished this. I actually finished something." Ghost put a hand on his shoulder. "That's just the start. You've got a good mind. You just never learned how to use it right. When you get out of here, you're going to do something with your life. I can tell." Danny laughed through his tears. "You really believe that?" "I do. But it doesn't matter what I believe. What matters is what you believe. You've got to see it for yourself. Old Walter passed away that summer. Went to sleep one night and never woke up. 23 years behind bars, and he died in a concrete cell far from anyone who loved him." Ghost attended the small memorial service they held in the chapel. Only a handful of inmates showed up. Most people had forgotten Walter even existed. Ghost thought about that for a long time afterward. How easy it was to disappear in a place like this. How a whole lifetime could shrink down to a few words spoken by strangers in an empty room. He promised himself he wouldn't let that happen. He would get out. He would make the years he had left count for something. The two men who tested Ghost after Big Ray's fall learned their lessons quickly. Neither confrontation lasted more than a few seconds. Ghost handled both situations the same way, using only enough force to neutralize the threat before stepping back. No anger, no brutality. Just efficient resolution, and then it was over. After the second incident, the challenges stopped completely. Everyone understood now. The Marine wasn't someone to test. But more importantly, he wasn't someone to fear either. He didn't prey on the weak. He didn't take what wasn't his. He just existed, quiet and solid as a rock, helping whoever was willing to accept help. Letters from his daughter kept coming. She was doing well in school. She'd joined the track team. She'd made new friends. She asked when he was coming home, and each time she asked, the question carried a little more weight. She was growing up without him. Every month that passed was a month he couldn't get back. Ghost wrote back faithfully, telling her about the books he was reading, the chess games he was playing, the small victories of prison life. He never told her about the fights or the danger. She didn't need to carry that burden. He just told her he loved her and that he was counting the days until he could see her face again. Finally, after 14 months that felt like 14 years, his release date arrived. The morning was cold and gray, just like the day he'd arrived. Ghost woke before dawn and lay in his bunk, listening to the sounds of the prison stirring to life. Danny was still asleep on the top bunk, snoring softly. In a few hours, Ghost would walk out those gates and never look back. He packed his few belongings in silence. The books he'd accumulated. The letters from his daughter, carefully bundled with a rubber band. A small wooden chess piece that one of the younger inmates had carved for him as a going-away gift. Danny woke up and watched him pack. Neither of them said much. What was there to say? They shook hands, and Danny promised to look Ghost up when he got out in 6 months. Ghost wrote down his sister's address in Cleveland and told Danny he'd better keep that promise. The walk to the processing center felt surreal. Ghost passed through Cell Block D one last time, and inmates he'd gotten to know over the past 18 months nodded at him from their cells. Some called out good luck. Others just watched in silence, maybe wondering if they'd ever get the same chance. At the main gate, the warden was waiting. He was an older man with tired eyes who'd seen too many people come through this place. He shook Ghost's hand firmly. "You're different from most," the warden said. "I've been doing this job for 20 years. I've seen men come in here bad and leave worse. I've seen men come in decent and get chewed up by the system. But you came in and you made things better. Not just for yourself, for everyone around you." Ghost didn't know how to respond to that. He just nodded. That takes something special, the warden continued. I don't know what you're planning to do out there, but whatever it is, I think you'll do it well. They opened the gate, and Ghost stepped through. The morning air hit his face, cold and clean. Outside, the world stretched in every direction. Full of possibilities he'd almost forgotten existed, a bus was waiting to take released inmates to the nearest town. Ghost climbed aboard with his small bag of belongings and $47 in his pocket. He took a seat by the window and watched Ridgemont State Correctional Facility shrink in the distance until it disappeared completely. 3 hours later, he stepped off the bus in Cleveland. His sister was waiting in the parking lot, and standing next to her was a 12-year-old girl with braids and bright eyes and a smile that made everything he'd survived worth it. His daughter ran toward him and threw her arms around his waist. "Daddy," she whispered into his chest. "You're home." Ghost held her tight, feeling tears burn in his eyes for the first time in longer than he could remember. "Yeah, baby girl," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm home." The other passengers walked past them, heading to their own reunions or their own lonely roads. None of them noticed the quiet black man holding his daughter like she was the most precious thing in the world. They didn't know his story. They didn't know what he'd survived or what he'd overcome. They just saw a father and his child together again after too long apart, and maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. Ghost had spent his whole life learning how to fight. But standing there in that parking lot, holding his daughter, he finally understood what he'd really been fighting for all along. This moment. This chance. This second opportunity to get it right. He wasn't going to waste it.